Konnichiwa.
The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And you're listening to America's Top 40. No?
40 things about church planting.
Oh, there you go. Wow. Do you think we could come up with 40?
Yeah, we could. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things today that I figured.
BIVO better be one of them. I'm just saying.
Nine things. It actually was when I was writing the list, and then our podcast started, and I was like, well, this is just this week. We can always hit it back next week too.
So before we get into our topic, because we've only got 3 episodes left, this being one of the 3, right? 48, 49, 50, and then we're done forever. What's going on, man? What's going on in your life? Anything new?
Well, I am almost at the very end of my build. In fact, that should coincide right with the end of this podcast. It's like Methuselah, when it is finished, it will come. We basically, my finished carpenter comes down today. I think he's got a couple more days here, and that's it. And then really? Beyond that, it's painting, which I'll be doing in the cracks and crevices of my life when I can find little bits of margin. So we get really good with the spray gun, I think.
Yeah. How many bedrooms is your house? 1
for each person and 2 offices.
Okay. Is one of the offices in the garage still, like you had it before?
No. In fact, what was my garage?
Do you not have that garage office anymore? Or is that now like a mother-in-law room or something?
No, that actually became now the front hallway.
Oh, you combined the two.
Yeah, you didn't know we combined the 2 buildings?
Dude, how would I know? You and I talk like
you
a half hour a week.
You got to come see it. You just got to come see my house, man.
I didn't think I was invited. I didn't think your wife. I thought she put down the law. Don't ever let Pete come to our house.
That was the rule, yes. And
when I approached your house, your dog was going to kill me.
My dog will kill anybody who approaches the house. That is true. So, yeah, she lets people know, do not come onto this property. And if they do, you can tell. You can tell if someone's on the property because she hasn't bit anyone yet, but she keeps them cornered. So I've watched her corner 2 people so far. Keeps them cornered up against the fence, and they're like, "Oh!" And it's like, "You dummy! Why'd you walk into my yard?"
Do you have a beware of dog sign on your?
I do.
Gate?
I have.
Okay, then that's their stupidity. If you got a beware of dog and you don't beware of the dog, you're an idiot.
Well, one of the people was the candy lady. So we get the candy lady. She walks around the neighborhood, and we always buy something because we feel sorry for her. So we buy candy, and it's like, how much? Oh, $10 a candy bar. And it's like, yeah, okay, great. And it's a big candy bar. We didn't know $10 candy bar. And she was cornered in the yard, and she was so mad at my dog. And it was like, but you came in the yard like, you wanted to make a candy sale bad enough to where you were willing to risk a bite from my dog. So he had her cornered. And then the other day it was one of the workers. So I just tell people, like, don't enter my property unless I come down, and then I'll introduce you to the dog. And as soon as she like Eden the other day, Eden had a social worker come, because she is adopted and stuff like that and special needs. So she gets a care worker from the county. This lady, I walked her in. I said, "Are you afraid of dogs?" Yeah, no. But my dog went and grabbed her toy and kept coming up to the lady and growling at her. And I said, she's telling you she's going to be angry if you don't grab the toy and throw it for her. But she would literally come up to her and go, "Arr." And I said, no, she wants to play. She's telling you, I'm not sure I like you until you throw my toy. And so once you throw the toy, you're all right.
That's hilarious. I can just imagine the social worker reports as she reports back. P.S. Beware of dog.
Right. Or she writes, this child is safe. So
I would think so, right? Because your dog probably would way protect your kids.
She's still growing too. I mean,
are you serious? She was already 90 pounds, wasn't she?
Yeah, she keeps growing because Andrea had been watching online where you can't feed the dog. Like people feed Dobermans too fast and they grow too fast. They feed them too much when they're really young, and they have this big growth spurt, and then it's really bad on their knees. So the Doberman experts are like, well, you wait, and then there's like a cycle, like a life cycle where you up their diet at a certain point after their legs are a little bit stronger because they'll grow too fast. And so Andrea followed that. Now she's still growing. She's hitting another growth spurt, but her legs are ready for the weight. I think she's like 11 months now. Is that right?
Oh, my dog's older.
No, that's not right. She's over a year.
That's what I thought, because my dog just turned 1 in September. My dog's small, man. She's got to be the smallest pit bull you ever saw.
Really?
Like even Ricky was bigger than Zoe.
She's a pocket pit.
She is, and she's got such the lab face. She has to be mixed with a lab.
Yeah,
just has to be. But she does this thing where she puts her ears out, and I'm not kidding. If she was green, you'd think you're looking at Yoda. It is the funniest thing in the world. It's total Yoda right there.
You got to send me some of those pictures because that dog has always been a beautiful dog.
Yeah, and she's a lover, man. She loves every person and every other animal, which was unlike Ricky. Ricky liked people. Well, she tolerated people, but she hated other animals.
Yeah.
Just if she saw another dog, she went into red mode and wanted to go attack it.
Wow. So I feel bad for asking this, but
there's your dog.
Yeah, there she is. Hey, what are you doing? Did you hear me talking about you? So Ricky and Lucy, they're both gone, right?
Yeah.
So that's crazy, dude. When we started this podcast, they were both we used to talk about them both.
Yeah, that's true, huh?
What are you doing? Don't come in here and barf. She didn't want those, but nothing. It was dry.
Dry heaves.
Yeah. So what about you, man? What's up in your life?
Dude, so I'm telling you, man, I think things are getting serious here at the Mitchell house about leaving California.
That's crazy, dude. Things I never thought I would hear Pete say.
I know, right? And not by my choice. I would have left 20 years ago if I had been able to. But so I've actually been reaching out to friends who I haven't talked to in years, but I know they've moved to freer states like Texas and Tennessee, and getting the lowdown from them on, if I were to move out there, where should I move? What's the weather like? What are the things you wish you'd known when you'd moved? All that type of stuff, trying to get the details on what's the best thing to do for the family.
Yeah, I'm hoping you'll hold off in case I go to one of the Carolinas. I might.
I don't think I'm going to get my wife to go to the Carolinas. And by the way, go to north, not south.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about either. But
it's a gun thing. Just go to the north.
Well,
not the south.
To me, it's more of a crab thing. Like, I want to know where can I get the best crab. I think North Carolina has the best crab.
I'll take your word for it. We're not really seafood people here.
Yeah, I am. I mean, the crab alone. But, the older I get, the more crab is not as appealing to me. Because I'm like, I'm going to.
I got to be honest with you. If your family moved, I would if we moved in the same area, that would literally be the greatest thing.
That would
ever.
be amazing. That would be pretty dang cool.
How many years has it been since the last time you and I saw each other face to face, not on Zoom?
It's been a couple years.
It's been a couple of years. Easy.
Yeah. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
And that's not because of COVID.
No.
Okay. Part of it was a textbook, but if I'm down there, I'm usually.
But it's not even that. Yeah. I mean, you live not close.
Yeah. I'm down San Diego. You're up, right on the edge of LA County. We've got to cross through Orange County. And then if I'm up that way, it's usually because I'm doing something like either in LA or maybe I'm seeing the family. Like I've been thinking recently, like when Andrea goes to see her mom, I could skip over there. Sometimes on Sunday afternoon she goes. So I think, hey, maybe movie time. Maybe I could crash a movie time. Except you normally see the movies way before I go. So like James Bond comes out Friday and I'm thinking already, like, I don't think I'll go see it this week because I want to watch all the other ones again. It's a great excuse to watch them all.
Yeah, it's tougher for me to see movies now because
you got Luke.
Yeah, it used to be that every Sunday Jamie would take Luke and Mackenzie and her mom and they'd go to the malls. Well, Luke's getting older now, and so he kind of realizes how stinking boring going to the mall is. He's not a shopper, right? He doesn't want to do that. And so he wants to hang out with me, not so much to hang out with me, but because he doesn't want to go there. So I can't, like, I don't have my Sundays the way I used to, where I'd go every Sunday to the movies. It's like, I can't do that because I can't take him to see a lot of the movies that I would see. They're just not appropriate for his age bracket. Yeah. So, we did see Venom this last Sunday. He and I went. So he'd never seen the first one. So we watched that on Saturday. And then.
Do you like the first one?
I liked them both.
No, did he? Like,
yeah,
was it age appropriate? Did you feel like, hey, this is okay? He can.
Well, see, the reason why I didn't have him watch Venom before that is because of how much more violent it is than the other Marvel movies. Because Venom like bites people's heads off. That's right. The thing. And so I was like, I don't know that because he was really sensitive as a much younger child. I was like, I don't know if he's going to like it. So he didn't want to even see it because he could just tell by the trailer that it was going to be. But he liked it. He enjoyed it.
How about this last one? Was it because it looked like they're going to play the humor card a lot more with Carnage? Is that what they did?
I don't remember a lot of humor in it.
So was it creepy?
No, it's Marvel. It's not creepy.
Is it Marvel or is it Sony?
It's not Marvel. It's like licensed from Marvel kind of thing.
Because I worked for Sony years back, and I remember going to the factory and, anything that Sony had, you could get super dirt cheap. So I got a couple Spider-Man DVDs. It was back in the day. I was thinking the other day, the very first DVD I ever owned. Do you remember what that was?
No.
Mine was Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Sleepy Hollow. I remember I bought it around Halloween. I had my new DVD player. I was a missionary in Wales. That was a big deal. Because I had a VHS. I lugged this old VHS overseas, and I had this converter, up-down converter, to take things from was it like 220 to 110 or whatever it was, and or was it 240, 120? I don't remember. But I had this up-down converter that if I could use any American product, but I had to. This thing weighed. It was like a brick, dude. It was super heavy. And I could convert anything, but that's what I would use.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's weird. Weird times. But yeah, I was just thinking back yesterday, like, that was it's like your first album. Do you remember what your first album was you owned as a son of a Baptist pastor?
I can tell you the first. Yeah, actually, I do know the first album I ever owned. The Mortal Kombat soundtrack to the original Mortal Kombat movie.
Whoa. Wow.
Finish him!
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Great techno music, man. Let me tell you.
Kombat. Yeah.
Great techno music.
Yeah. I saw that movie in the theater.
I probably did. Who knows?
Yeah. It wasn't a great movie, in fairness.
I loved that movie.
Did you?
Kano?
It's rad. I don't remember much of it. I just remember being like, this was not. But, it had some cool parts.
Sonya was played by this gal. I think her name was like Bridget Wilson. She was Miss Vaughn in Billy Madison. So I loved it because it was Miss Vaughn.
Oh, how funny.
Playing Sonya. I was like, oh,
that's
perfect.
That's great. So funny, man, these things. Well, hey, we're probably out of smack talk, running into our actual topic today, which, Pete, since we're shutting down the podcast, I thought it'd be good to talk about the things that we have tried over our last almost 450 episodes to lay down for church planners. As you know, we are, you can only do something for 8 years and not sound or feel repetitive. But of course, we've gone over all that. But yeah, I thought it'd be good on our not our penultimate episode, but our next but one penultimate episode. That's a very British way of saying that. Next but one. To talk about what are some of the values and things that we have. And I think our next two, our last one is going to be kind of like us talking, looking back, reminiscing. And next week, I don't know, we'll do something similar to this, but from a different angle. We might talk about, like we'll have our favorite moments, but maybe you mentioned the Dolphin, and that to me.
The Dolphin, and I just realized that at your funeral, I'm going to make sure that everyone who speaks at it is wearing a T-shirt with Jesus riding a T-Rex.
Please, yes, because I told Pete today, I was like, Pete, I'm counting on you for my funeral. You need to never grow up because I need you. I need you to deliver at my funeral.
Could you imagine if I'm like 98 because you finally died at like 102 and I'm going out there with the walker and I'm like, wait, get me the Dolphin. Get me the Dolphin.
Like, what are you talking about? The Dolphin hologram? No, dang you. I need an inflatable dolphin with a motor on it. They're like, we don't know where we could get one of those.
Like, harkening back. What that is, Grandpapa.
Oh gosh, harkening back to one of our greatest moments, and Pete's like, I'm sending one of those up on at your funeral.
Oh yeah, and for people who haven't been listening to the podcast and don't know what we're talking about, too bad.
And then you need to peace out with mi dragon.
Es muy rápido.
Oh, but we're stealing our own thunder.
Who drew the comic of the two of us, and I was wearing the Mi Dragonas Muy Rapido t-shirt, and you had Jesus riding a T-Rex, and someone drew that, and I think we stuck it in the Church Planter magazine. Was
that the coloring book one?
Maybe it was the coloring book one.
I think I did that because we gosh, that was funny. Back in the beginning, for those of you that don't know, Pete and I used to do completely stupid things for this. Stephen Furtick came out with that coloring book. It was kind of like scandalous. He had this coloring book, and it was almost like a pledge. I pledge allegiance to Stephen Furtick, and it got kind of like a bunch of negative press because people were like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cult-like," and so we made a comic book page. With you and I on it, because in the comic book with Stephen Furtick, it shows Stephen Furtick, and he's wearing his like open shirt and his rings and medallion or whatever, and he's all hipster in it. And so we made one, and I think you've got a snorkel and
because I had a picture
mask
with me like that. Yeah. That's what it was based off of.
Yes. And then there's me, and I got my little thing, and there was something to do with ninjas on that one. I remember that. And then it had a mock of whatever the text was. It was in Stephen Furtick's coloring book. I'll find that picture somewhere. And I actually colored on it. Like I scribbled on it like a little kid had scribbled in Sunday school. And we posted that, and then I think you and I laughed about it, and no one else did, but that is so true to the Church Planter podcast in the early days, right? We amused ourselves largely.
Yeah.
So ain't nothing wrong with that.
No.
All right. Well, hit us, Doc.
Great Scott. It's time for this week's topic.
That's the worst one you've ever done.
I couldn't remember. I'm like, wait, Doc, what's he talking about?
That was the worst. Normally you nail that.
We've done this so many times. I can't even remember what the heck I'm doing.
Let's get down.
It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty. So you threw me off.
Stretchy
Even
pants.
Mine was terrible.
You need some stretchy pants.
That's right. Sometimes, Chancho, a man must wear the stretchy pants. So, okay. So this kicks straight into my first point. In fact, I'll put these in the chat for you, Pete, because hey, we're getting close to the end here. So, might as well keep it kind of professional, right? So there we go. Those are the points I have. They're not bulleted, so you got to kind of make it out. But so one of the things that's going to really come in full swing here, no segue needed, is that one of the things that Pete and I have kind of modeled is the idea that being authentic is better than being respected. If you look at a lot of people, that are presenting in, Christian media, Christian broadcasting, there's a persona. You get that when you're a pastor or a leader. There's a persona, and I can mention any one of the names Tim Keller, Ed Stetzer, any of the guys, Greg Laurie, who just did a Harvest Crusade, or and you don't really know the real them. You don't talk about them stabbing themselves in the leg. You don't talk about what movies they think or what they think of Spider-Man or how they hang out with their kids or whatever. We have, from the beginning, I think, modeled that on this podcast, because at least for a church planner, you're going to be up and close and personal with your people. And so what I learned early on in ministry, I started off in megachurch, and I went to Wales where everything was small. And I quickly learned, there's no buffer here. And in church planning, there's no buffer. People are going to get to know the real you. And so I learned in church planning to just tell people, this is who I am. Just get to know me right away. Whatever you can say about me, or accuse me of, is probably worse than, or probably better than the real deal, than the me that God knows. That's not to say I was justifying any kind of simple behavior or, whatever, but it was a way of just asserting to people that, hey, get comfortable with yourself, because you're going to have to live with that guy. You just get comfortable with yourself, lead out of authenticity, because, sooner or later, the mask is going to fall. And you're going to get to know the real person. I mean, that's one of the things. It's one of the things when Barnabas Piper first started getting known, people were always asking him, "What's your dad like? What's it like living with your dad?" And he'll talk about the quirks that his dad has, and people love that stuff because it's funny, and you feel like, okay, I see the leader in the pulpit. I want to get to know the real guy, because people might only see me in the pulpit, but I got to live with this other guy all these different hours of the week. So, 24 hours a day, times 7 minus 1 hour, how much of the real us, do people know? So I learned early on in ministry that if you want respect, go into some other field than church planning. Right? Because you're going to be unpacking the trailer. You're going to be, this and that. So that's one of the reasons that Pete and I have Smack Talk. It's only one of them, though. One of them is we just really enjoy it and we like it. And like Pete says, we work out our friendship here. But the other part of that is just to model authenticity, that you can be spirit-filled. You can be discipling and saving souls and doing some really big kingdom stuff and still be you. That's kind of the secret.
Word.
Well, I thought maybe you would have something to say about that one, especially.
No, I just was thinking back actually about one of our guests that we had on last year. I guess right before or right after COVID started, is in May of last year. And an old friend of mine from college, who's a pastor up in LA County somewhere. And he was saying how, when he preaches, he's always using stories from his life. And he's got people are like, "Oh, Ryan, don't go any further." Cause he would just he was very honest with people about his own shortcomings, where he screws up continually in his life. He's not one of those guys who's trying to just put on a face and a front and, be like me kind of a person. I mean, he's just I'm as real as the rest of you. And that's, I think, what you want.
Well, you mentioned something too, and that was, and I think this is the spirit in which we did this. You mentioned at one point, you're like, I got this from my kids. My kids can always go back and listen. It's like people really do get to know us to a certain degree. I would argue that same with preaching. Lloyd Jones would talk about this special relationship that would happen between a a preacher and his congregation, because the preacher looks out and knows the people sitting in front and in the congregation, knows their problems, knows a lot of their issues, particularly in a smaller church. But they also start to feel like they know you. I would say our audience, our listeners probably feel they know us pretty well by now. And so when we bump into them, a lot of times there's a warmth and because they've traveled with us for 400 something episodes, there is a relationship. I think you and I, when we're talking to them, there is I'm picturing, like I have a picture of my listener every week. My listener is the church planner who is struggling, the church planner wondering if they got it right, a church planner wondering like, am I off track? What am I missing? Having people, leave, having people betray them, so sometimes I want to make them laugh. I just want to get them to laugh for a few minutes and to relax. And there is a portion of this that I would say is soul care. But I think people do know that we care for them. And that kind of leads into the next point, that I call cha-ching. So we're looking at our values, right? So being authentic is better than being respected. Second one is cha-ching. We made a rule early on this podcast that we would always say cha-ching when we were promoting anything personally. Like
I think that had to do more because we found it funny, than anything else.
Well, it absolutely, like that's what but it really is a value as well, because you and I never saw the planter. And we even had talks about this. We were like, dude, I know how to make money. You're like, I got to keep these two worlds separated, because you're like, I can make money, but I don't want to flick that switch with church planners. I remember we would have those talks, and because we did the BIVO thing, and granted, we did that at a fraction of the cost of what you would have done something like that for in your day-to-day job. And I just remember you're like, yeah, no, it's not really about the money. Let's just do it and see what happens. We'll keep it affordable for planners, yada, yada. But there was never the desire to make money off of planners. And I've had people contact me. I've had companies contact me, and I will always give them the spiel that church planners are like veterans. You don't screw with them, right? Like, you don't screw with a veteran because they're sacrificing everything. Soldiers sacrifice, they risk it, they put it on the line. And I feel the exact same way about church planners. So will I offer training for money? Yes. But is it an affordable price point? Yes. Am I hoping to provide more value than what they pay? Yes. But it's never been about to make money. In fact, this podcast probably will go down as one of the most wasted opportunities for monetizing something that, probably existed in the church planning space, because you and I did not set up a website to collect money. I'm just thinking of other church planning podcasts that did that. There was one that was big, and it set up this big thing, and it made tons of money. And, and you and I intentionally did not go that route, because it wasn't like, hey, this podcast is a means to an end. Now, we did want to start a magazine. And we did start the podcast to proclaim the magazine. But at the end of the day, we kind of came to see that, hey, wait a second, this podcast actually is more valuable. We think
the podcast is way bigger than the magazine.
Yeah. So any thoughts on that?
No, I would just say that I don't think, for us, there was always the sense that we don't want to take advantage of church planners.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say that we were opposed to making money. We just didn't want to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you can't ever make money, because we did. We had the BIVO Inner Circle. I had the Platinum BIVO group. We had that stuff, but like specifically the Platinum group, which was $5,000 to come through it. If you did the single pay, if you did the pay over time, it was like $6,500, which is what almost everybody did.
Right.
I would talk to them beforehand and I would tell them, hey, look, when we have this phone call, I'm not going to let you sign up. Like, this is just information. This is for you to find out if this is right for you, and for me to find out if I think this would be right for you. And there were several people that I'm like, look, I don't think this is going to be good for you, and here's why. But at the same time, because I'm such a massive introvert, going into sales would not be a wise choice for someone who's as massive an introvert as me. And that's what I'm in. So I believe you can always work through those things that could be hindrances.
Right.
But it's better to know, hey, this is a problem that I'm going to have to work through if I'm going to choose to do this. Right. And that's where I wanted everyone to be at, was like, you knew this is good for you or not good for you. And really, I would look at it a lot, and I'd, talk to different pastors. I'd be like, look, you're a shepherd. I can tell from what you've done and how you're talking to me, you're a shepherd. And I go, it's harder for shepherds to make money doing what we do, because it's not about that whole relationship and counseling. It's about, you need to do this, Mr. Client, and get it done. It's more like the teacher. The teacher could just go, look, boom, do it. And I'd be like, I want you to understand that, because you're going to have to work through that if you're going to do this as a business. So I just want to make clear that everyone understands it wasn't that we were opposed to making money. It was like, we respected church planners, and we wanted them to like go into it with their eyes wide open, no matter what it was. Like, have your eyes wide open.
Yeah. I remember you and I chatted at one point, and I'm like, well, what if someone comes in, takes all of our stuff, and just hops out, and you're like, we let him. Like,
what are you going to do?
You're like, I'm like, what if, you would offer money back? I remember people going, in fact, I don't know if anyone said they wanted their money back, but there was an issue with one guy who was like, I don't have the money to pay. And they're like, okay. Like, it was just the way that you conducted yourself. I learned a lot from that. Like,
what I hated is when, and this happened on several occasions. So people sign up for the payment plan. Yeah. And if they would talk to me, almost anything they say, I'd be like, all right, whatever, you need to readjust the payment, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I detested is someone who's saying, hey, I'm a pastor and I'm going to flake on this bill, and I'm never going to reach out to Pete, and Pete's sending me these letters, and I'm just going to ignore it. Like, that is a character issue.
Right.
And that would irk me, but not to the point where I was like, feeling like I lost out. I was just like, why? Just freaking talk. Just literally talk. Yeah. It's not like I really cared that much about the money, because especially at the time I was doing all that, I was making so much money with my other clients. I was like, whatever, dude. You know?
It's like it's a drop in the bucket. I remember us talking, and I'm like, that's a lot of money to me. And at that time it was, and, but it never was about the money. In fact, I think we ran that program for like a year, and it was rad, and people really helped from it. And I think at the end of it, like, which is typical for me, it was like, hey, this is more time than what I have right now.
Right.
And that's what things usually come back to for me, is time. But the next one was bigger is not better. By the way, the first two are things that you can apply to your church plant. There might have been things that, values we showed on the podcast, but we were trying to model those for you as a planter with your church. Like, don't ever see your church as, the means to get rich quick, like, it's not going to be that if you're a church planter. You're going to need to be BIVO, which is something that we also, through that BIVO program, modeled and talked about. Maybe we should kick straight into BIVO on this. BIVO was one of our values, wasn't it?
Yeah, still is. I would say even more so today, that I believe personally that BIVO needs to be happening more, which is not to say that I think it's the only way or the best way, because I believe God calls people to different things, right? God calls people to full-time ministry for sure. But I think you can have a bigger influence when you're a part of the community you're trying to serve, not just speaking at the community you're trying to serve.
Right.
but like you're in it, you're working with them, you're doing everything that they have to do. They got to wake up and take kids to school and go to work, and you're doing the same thing. And you're out there with real people, not just in this little bubble of, you got your secretary and, the youth pastor and the worship leader. And I mean, that's the bubble you operate in. And then, all the heathens show up on Sunday and we preach and sing and all that. It's like, I really think BIVO is probably the best way for the average church planner to go, for sure. Way more than just, all of a sudden, because then it changes the dynamic of the church. Like if you get your income from the church, then you're always pushing for, what do we do to get more people here? What do we do to, get the tithes up? Trying
to make a living wage is difficult, dude.
And then you're like, oh, well, we got to get a smaller place because, I still got to make X, but we don't have Y coming in. Right. So we need rent to be Z over here. And it changes the dynamics. But when it's like, okay, look, the money that the church brings in, that's going for all the church stuff because I got my income somewhere else. Like you and Charlie were, I think, great examples of that. Charlie has a great job. I mean, he's just one of those type of employees that always gets, really good paying jobs. And he just wasn't worried about the income from it. And you could see his heart. Like he really was there to serve God in his job.
Yeah.
And you weren't. You were there to make money. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, like,
well, we had a talk once, and he goes, because we were talking about, we're team leadership and we're equals and what have you. And at a certain point, we were talking about, there's that concept of first among equals. Now we're a true team, true equals, but I took the lead on a lot of things because I was a guy set apart full time. And one of the times we were chatting, Charlie made the admission. He goes, if I want to be first among equals, I think I'd have to put my butt on the line like you and make peanuts, and set myself aside, because that's what it is really, is when you're setting yourself aside full time. And I wasn't full time. I had my BIVO job. There was 1 year at Refuge I was full time. But prior to that, I wasn't. And so, I was teaching a university course to make up, or I was doing a couple other things here and there. But those little things that I was doing, it was so I could be set apart primarily, and then over the years I would do like through the word part-time, contract work, or I take little contracts here and there. Those are the kinds of my book advance. I mean, I lived off, they weren't much, but I lived off that was an extra, if I stretch out, it'd be like an extra $1,000 a month for a year. I think my first book advance was like $15,000. And I was like, well, there's a year, $1,000 a month coming. Like I counted on that stuff. So I was living pretty hand to mouth for a while there coming off the mission field. But for a year there, I made a full-time wage, and that was great. But what I was going to say is that you kind of, I will say it this way. I keep bumping into bivocational ministers that have gone that way, and they're just happy. They're happy. There's this peace about them that wasn't there before. It's something you said years ago. Having money solves a lot of the problems that not having money creates. And I've always thought about that, like, what a great statement. It doesn't do anything else other than that.
Yeah.
But that's what it does. And so I'll bump into almost all the guys I trained back in 2015. We did this church planting train station in Oceanside. Almost every single one of them now is a bivocational. And they're so happy they're like, hey, I'll buy lunch. Because I always bought them lunch. They're like, I'll buy today. And it's like they have money, their family, their families are doing good. Their wife she could buy a purse if she wants to. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a game changer for them. And I like to look back and just think we helped contribute to that conversation. We modeled it, and we talked about it before it was cool, and just really championed that for 8 years.
It's interesting you bring up that line, before it was cool, because obviously in some parts of the country, it's still not cool to be BIVO. And a lot of people, that's not a real pastor. He's not full time. And I still remember my dad being a pastor, And, like being BIVO, which he was for many years, I think pretty much all my high school, he was BIVO. And society will see that as a lesser. He's doing a lesser job. He's a lesser man.
Right.
And the reality is no way, man.
It's greater when you've been on both sides.
He was a school teacher at juvenile hall. Like he literally, and he wanted to stay at juvenile hall. He used to joke. He goes, look, juvenile hall is one of the best places you can be a teacher, because if the kid screws up, you get to send them back to their room, and no one wants to go back to their room because it's like not like the room at home.
I didn't know that. That's so funny.
It's like prison room. It's no, I want to be in school, Mr. Mitchell, but think about the impact that he had on kids, because he would teach science, and he goes, I get to teach creationism as one of the theories. And so, and plus being a juvenile hall teacher, it's not like they can just run out and grab another teacher. Like that's a special teacher that they need that works there.
Dude, and when you would tell me about your dad, like when we first started, I'm like, your dad, because I would use that same term. I'd be like, your dad was a BIVO church planter before it was cool, like way before it was cool. Like it was, the conversation shifted now where people get the more missional aspect of it, where it's starting to be like, oh yeah, Paul was that. And he was intentionally, wow, that's hardcore. But in your dad's day, it was none of that. People didn't think they felt sorry for that. And yet your dad was onto something, back then. Like,
it wasn't intentional. Like it was intentional in the sense that he literally had to do it because the church couldn't afford to pay him.
Right. He wasn't thinking this is the missional.
Yes. He was not like going into it going, this is what God wants.
But how rad is that he was like, that's what because at the core of it, this is what the mission dictates that I must do. And I don't have any problem with that. Sean Benesh just wrote an article. I'm a huge fan of Sean Benesh. Love what he writes. I'll give him a shout out, intrepid.com. But Sean wrote, he wrote this article today on survival. And it was basically like, hey, some of you are doing this for survival reasons, and other you are doing it for mission. He says neither one is better than the other, because at the bottom of the line, it's still the mission that you're on. Like there is no better than anything else. So, but anyways, well, those are our values. I think that's all we're going to get through. So next week we'll continue this list.
Is it a part two?
Is it part two? You knew I had to do that before the end. So
we can stretch it out for 3. Who are you kidding?
Come on. No, we got to do our greatest hits. Our final episode has to have our greatest hits. So you and I reminiscing, and I just, I want to kind of say one of the things that I am proud of, though, Pete, is there are planners today out there that this is more for you than it is for me, but there are planners out there today that because of the work that you and I did in BIVO, primarily you, they're not poor anymore. Like they were willing to be poor, but they actually can take care of their families, and they're happy, and kind of like the guys I was talking about on the ground. But that just to me is such a huge, like the things have moved a little bit, which is really exciting.
I know one of our BIVO guys who, I can honestly say this is a man who I respect immensely. He told me, and I think I've shared this on the podcast. He goes, I used to be more of a socialist. He goes, because I never really could see myself ever being able to make money. And he goes, and now I'm able to make money. And he goes, now I'm understanding you capitalists a lot better.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yes, immense respect for him as well. Yeah, that's cool. So, it's cool. Pete, anything else you got going on by way of podcasts or things going down?
Dan Sam's church planner in Ohio. He runs House Church Network out there in Ohio. He and I have a podcast called From Concealment, which is about as far from church planner podcast as you can get, other than Dan's always acknowledging God, Jesus. Hey, that's where I put my faith and hope in, but it's much more of a political. Started out as a gun podcast. Now it's just us ranting against the it's us raging against the machine, shall I say. And but that one, I've got another one, Thriving Christian Business, that I do with Dave Negri, who's out in Florida. And yeah, so those are the ones that I got.
Yeah, so I am folding down Ministry Ninja podcast as well.
Are you really?
Yeah, it's been going for a couple years, but I am starting a new one. So
isn't that the one you do with Barry and your wife?
Andrea? Yeah, so we're going to start a new one, which I won't announce today until it's firmly in place. So give it a couple weeks. On our final episode, I'll announce that. So that one's starting up. But you can still catch Ministry Ninja on that this week. We talked about women in ministry, quite a controversial one, and we'll finish that podcast with a 2-part episode, not intentionally. In fact, when we started that, as a 2-part series, we had no idea that we were going to, stop, but, you can still get Plantology, the book. Be sure to pick that up, on the course front. Friday, I know this is live on Facebook, but you can still, for those of you that want to join it, you can go to ministryninja.com/5Q. You can check out the course that I'll be teaching live with Alan Hirsch every other week. It's the 5Q movement planting course. It'll run for 12 weeks, every other week over a 24-week period. So 12 sessions over 26 months. And that'll be every other Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And if you want to check that out, you can. It's a cheap price point. If you go, it's $800. If you bring someone else, it's $400 for each additional person. So you can split the cost of that. And the more people you bring, the more you can split the cost. So we're going to record the first session, which will be this Friday. And so if you missed this Friday, don't worry. This podcast will air Monday. You can jump into the next 11 sessions and not really miss a ton. Just jump in and pick up in the conversation. But yeah, that'll be the 5Q movement planting course with Alan Hirsch and myself. Kind of a cool tag team on training there. And you can, again, hit that at ministryninja.com/5Q. Well, Pete, while you're taking all those courses and listening to all those podcasts, obviously you need someone to do your church finances.
Yes, I do. And that's where I rely on the good people over there at simplifiedchurch.com.
Simplifiedchurch.com. What do they do, Pete?
They do everything. They make my church simple.
Do they now?
Workman's comp, payroll taxes, IRS compliance, you name it, they do it.
Hey, and one last thing. While you're doing that, you also want to make sure that not only when they come to your page that they're going to enter the right giving portal and all that, yada, yada, yada. You also want to make sure that when they're watching your YouTube videos or listening to your sermons you don't want them to go away from the site to go to the podcast and then they're not there anymore. You want to keep them on the site so that they can, be like, hey, maybe I donate to this or whatever it is. But you want to keep them on the site. And to do that, Pete, you need sermonboss.com.
What's that? Sermon Boss?
Sermonboss.com.
Oh, I thought it was MoGiv. Okay.
SERMONBOSS.
That's the best.
So that'll probably come up on the final episode where we talk about our greatest hits, how we used to go to conferences and speak, and people would start shouting, MoGiv, MOGIV,
No E, no E.
No E, that's right. Man, that was funny. Funny. Every once in a while still, I think the last time I went and spoke at something, someone said it just for fun. So there's some oldies out there, man. So, all right. Hey, thanks for joining us. This has been the Church Planter Podcast. This has been Peyton Jones and Pete Mitchell reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.